There, we're going to do another Mag.JS example. This is actually going to be a componentizing example showing you how to reuse code and more specifically how you do not need to put HTML into your JavaScript even when componentizing templates. Alright, so we always start with our boilerplate, which I get from the Mag.JS homepage on GitHub. So just scrolling down here after the getting started. In our examples, we have a boilerplate JS bin. So just going to start with that. In our boilerplate JS bin, we can see here we've got a few things that we can work with, such as the add-ons. But we're just going to call this right away simple messaging. And we're going to create some HTML just to kind of get us started. So our messaging is going to have a UI, and the UI will simply be a couple of buttons that will have some different classes like default message, error message, and success message. And we're going to use that as an initializer into our parent module. So as a component, you have your UI module that will actually do the interaction, and then you have your component module, which is doing that componentizing template. And as you'll see as we get into this, so we're going to have a default button. Just going to copy these over, success, and an error. So we're going to use the names here to help us do this. There we go, error. Alright, oops. So now we have our three initializers. And this is what we're going to use to actually, communicate with our component module. And our module itself is just going to be simply nested right in here. And it's going to be called messaging. And what this will do is going to be our template that we're going to use to show messages. So the message will come from the button. Button is the initializer, and the initializer is in our demo module, and that will then initialize our messaging module. Remember, in Mag.js, each module is denoted by its ID identifier, and here we're going to have a simple template within our messaging module called message. And in that template, it's going to be really simple. This is going to be what's going to be reused. We have a simple div container, which will have a span to house our actual message. So basically, either default, success, or error will appear in here. Okay, so why don't we get started into our actual code. So I think we should focus on the top level module. So our top level module is our actual initializer. I don't think we're going to need a controller in this case here. But in our view, what we're going to say here is we're going to say for every button, so we're doing a greedy selector that's denoted by the dollar in front of the selector. And each one, on click, we're going to get our message. So what is the message that we want to use here? So I think a really simple way is just to use the class names of each of our buttons. So this is the node for the event in the onClick. So we're just going to grab the class name and we're going to use that as our default message. Now the next thing we want to do is create our actual module for our messaging component here. And what we're going to do with that is basically onClick, we would simply call it here. So we'll use our ID here. And then we need to create a new module. So why don't we do that too? And we'll call it, let's call it messaging, but with a capital M. And we can now pass it some properties, such as our message itself. So let's just start with that. Message is message. So we have a messaging component here with a template, and we have the messaging module itself. So in our module, why don't we start creating some things like just a simple view. So why don't we do that? Message.view equal function. And every view gets, of course, our state and our props. So I think what we simply want to do is define our message in here. So we want to say state.message is equal props.message. So when I click this, it shows us what the message value is. Success, error, default. This is a really simple thing. This is nothing complicated here that we're doing. We're just simply showing it. So one thing I'm going to do is close the HTML for a second just so we have a little more real estate here. Now, I think what would be nice is instead of it overriding whatever we click, wouldn't it be nice if it kept on adding new messages? So basically what we're saying is let's turn this into an array, and we'll save them. So once we have an array in a collection, we should really create a model. So that's what I think we're going to do. We're going to create a model container. We'll call it message model. And that will just house all of our information, specifically our messages. So say messages equal an array. Okay. And the idea here is that whenever messaging gets called, and remember the controller only gets called once on each initialization. But since we're initializing it multiple times here on every click, this will get called each time. So all we need to really do is pass in or add our props into our array. So we're simply going to push it, whatever it is, and then here we're going to tell this guy to just equal this. So let's see what's going on here. So we haven't mapped anything yet. Okay, so this is a very handy built-in function. We're simply going to map things. This will be our message. And all we're going to do is return an object of our map. Now remember our template, right? We have div and span. So why don't we tell span to equal our mess.message. And this way we can add new things to it. So just to kind of clarify what's happening here is we're returning an array. Okay? We're adding things to our array each time it's being called. Each time it's being called is whenever we click any of our buttons. Then we give it a unique message. We do that, we push on a new message into our messages array. When that gets added, we then update our message template for each array item. Now here we're telling it to say span should equal this new message. That's why every time I click it, we get new ones added. Okay. This is a really simplistic and straightforward thing to do. So, we want to probably add a little bit more information, style, and a simple thing we can add to that, probably the class itself. So instead of just adding the message, we can also add a class. So why don't we do that here? We're going to just simply say class name equals our message to it. It is actually the class name. And that way, what we can do here is add to that div a unique class. So in our div, one way to do this is to say class name, and this is a hook-in from our add-ins. So our class name equals our mess dot class name. Oh, you know what? Probably one other thing we'd like to do is create some special styling just for our messaging. So why don't we create a message class? I think that would be nice. So in our messaging module, we're simply going to add like a default class, message class equals, I'm going to call this simple alert. So this way, our messaging module has control of this, and it will add it to our container class here. So we're actually adding two classes. Okay, we're going to add the class that is specific to what's being passed here, as well as our own class to give it some styling to the div we have over there. So this way, we have our own styling that's unique to the module, as well as specific styling that's unique to the message itself. This is just further componentizing. One last thing that would be nice is to show more functionality is to be able to remove the specific one. So this is getting into more modeling control, I should say. And that's why we've separated the model here. So this would be like kind of add message and remove message. And push is basically an add. So in a remove scenario, we need a click, and we need something to click. Why don't we go back to our HTML for a second here? Why don't we add an icon? And all that icon is going to be a simple little X mark. And that X is just going to be coming from our CSS. We have a simple alert I, or icon. Alright, so let's see what's happening here. Alright, and there we go. We just have a little X that's all based on styling currently. But what we'd really like is, and let's remove the HTML now for a second, give us a little more space. What we'd really like is something to click. Now, there's many ways to do this because of the versatility of Mag.JS. One way is we can do a greedy selector like this. Remember, this equals state. So you can see greedy, which is $, I, which is our icon, equal here, on click function. And then to our array, we could just do a simple splice method. And all that will really do is say that our given index variable, remove 1. But now the question is, how do we find our index? Now, since this is a greedy selector in Mag.js, it gives us some information. And some of the arguments we get here is event. We get the parent index, which is not really what we want. We also get the element itself, which is not what we want. But here we get some interesting object data. And the object data also has an index. And that's what we want. So we're going to say object data dot index. So now on click of every icon, we're going to basically remove that specific index from the list of messages. Let me check this out. So now let me just click remove the middle one. So remember, we have default, error, success. So when I remove error, we should still have default and success. Oh, there we got a little error here. Oh, I didn't add the splice. Alright, because that's just an array. So this is a native JavaScript object. So let's try that again. Click error, success, and message. So now I have error, success, and default. I want to remove success, so we should have error and default. It doesn't seem like it's clicking through here. Let's see what's going on. Do a quick console log and make sure we're even here. There we go. Alright, I see what's happening. So it is here, but it's not updating this. And there's really a simple reason for that. See, in Mag.js, the view only gets called when there's a change to the state. And since messages models is not part of the state, it won't get updated. And so all we have to do is really simply add that to the state. And we can just call messages equal this, like that. So now every time this changes, and this will update over here as well. So we can just say like this state. And now this should work. Let's check it out. Alright, so we have default, success, and error. I'm going to remove success. Now I have default and error. And there you go. So this is just a really simple, fast, but pretty straightforward way in which you can do a component that uses a template. And as you've noticed here, there's no HTML needed anywhere in here. Even though we do have access to the elements, it's just not necessary with Mag.JS. And we can look back at our module template here, and you can see we have one module inside of another. And this module, the messaging module, is using its own template called message for the array of messages to display them over there, and also to interact with them and delete things as necessary and remove them. So I think this is just kind of a simple, good example showing you how you can separate things. Message model is just your collection, and you could have other functions attached to it, such as add or remove. We just, for convenience, did them inline over here. But this should probably be added to a message model method, such as remove message. And to add a message here, when pushing it, we could probably also create another method in the message model called add message, just as a container for this. To override the default, we could add a simple merge of the properties that come in through props that would override this module's default class if necessary. But everything else is just being passed through the props, such as class name here and the message itself. And if we go back to our original initializer, this is our front-end UI that is calling component module, which is just simply a mag module, just like its parent here. They're exactly the same. We're just separating its use. This is a button click that initializes the module and then creates that message that we see displayed over here. So that's about it. Hope you learned something from this example. I will add the link here so you can utilize that and look through it. And until next time, thanks again.